Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. This whole situation has slowly turned into something way more complicated than what people were first told. At the beginning, the story sounded simple and clean. Two people walking away from royal pressure, escaping nonstop attention, and trying to live a more peaceful and private life. A lot of people supported that idea right away. It felt believable. But now, the picture doesn't look nearly as smooth as it did before. There are just too many strange details piling up, and people have started catching on. And this isn't only coming from random social media gossip or online rumors. We're talking about journalists, royal experts, and investigators who've spent years studying powerful families and public figures. One name that keeps popping up in these conversations is Tom Bower. Now, people can argue about whether they agree with him or not, but one thing is clear: Tom Bower doesn't usually throw out wild claims just for attention. He builds detailed arguments piece by piece. He looks at timelines, public statements, interviews, and patterns that most people overlook. And once he started digging deeper into Harry and Meghan's story, a lot of people suddenly started paying very close attention. What really caught his eye wasn't only the public drama or the royal family tension, it was the way their entire image seemed carefully managed from the very beginning. And when people started revisiting the timeline surrounding Archie's birth, that's where things started looking especially confusing. Here's where it gets strange. The palace originally told the public that Meghan had gone into labor during the afternoon. Huge news broke everywhere, reporters rushed to cover it, and royal fans were celebrating. But then, only a short time later, another update revealed Archie had actually been born earlier that same morning. That's not some tiny mistake people can easily ignore. That's an 8-hour difference, and naturally, people started asking questions. A lot of critics looked at that timeline and thought something felt off. Why announce labor hours after the baby had already arrived? For many people, that goes beyond simple privacy concerns. They believe it looks more like an attempt to carefully control how the story was presented to the public. And this is exactly where investigators like Tom Bower begin digging deeper. Royal births have always followed strict traditions and official procedures. There are palace communications teams, medical staff, royal reporters, and carefully planned announcements involved. So when details suddenly don't line up the way people expect, it immediately grabs attention and creates even more speculation. There are usually official signatures, medical confirmations, and detailed records connected to royal births. That process exists for a reason. It keeps everything clear and official, especially because royal children are tied to the line of succession. Normally, these events are handled very carefully with public transparency built into the process. But when Archie was born, people noticed that some of those usual steps didn't seem as visible as expected, and that immediately sparked debate online and in the media. That's where people started bringing up the old royal rule known as the of the body requirement. It sounds ancient and dramatic, but in royal terms, it actually carries legal importance. Basically, the rule means a child must be physically born from the royal mother to qualify in the official line of succession. It's not just ceremonial tradition, it's tied to royal law and legitimacy. Now, nobody's saying anything extreme here, but when official details appear limited or unclear, people naturally begin filling in the blanks themselves. That's how public curiosity works, especially when the royal family is involved. The mystery grows bigger every time basic questions seem to go unanswered. And honestly, Harry and Meghan's very private approach only added more attention to the situation. Instead of calming speculation, their silence sometimes made people even more curious. Then, when you compare how their children are seen publicly versus William and Kate's children, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are regularly seen at family events, royal celebrations, and public appearances. People watch them grow up naturally in front of the cameras. The public gets little moments here and there that feel genuine and relaxed. But with Archie and Lilibet, everything feels far more restricted and carefully managed. Photos of them are extremely rare, and when pictures do appear, they're often tightly controlled, taken from angles that hide details, or released in ways that feel highly planned out. To some critics, it doesn't come across like spontaneous family sharing. It feels more like a carefully timed media strategy. Now, wanting privacy for children is completely understandable. A lot of people respect that. But critics argue that when every image and every appearance feels this controlled, it starts looking less like simple protection and more like image management. That's where public opinion slowly started shifting. At first, many people believed Harry and Meghan simply wanted peace away from royal pressure. But over time, some began wondering if they were also carefully shaping public perception behind the scenes. And while all this speculation was growing, their California lifestyle was attracting attention too. That Montecito life isn't exactly small or low budget. Massive property, private security, luxury travel, staff, media projects. The costs add up fast. In the beginning, they landed huge deals with Netflix, Spotify, interviews, and Harry's book, which made it seem like everything would run smoothly. But behind the scenes, not every partnership worked out the way people expected. Spotify cutting ties with them became a major headline, especially after those sharp public comments that followed. Netflix still appears to expect strong content and big numbers from them too. So now, some critics believe Harry and Meghan are stuck in a difficult position where they constantly need public attention to keep momentum going. And the reality is, a huge amount of that attention still comes from their royal connection. That's what puts Harry in such an uncomfortable spot right now. Prince Harry originally stepped away from royal life because he wanted less pressure, less media attention, and more freedom. That was the entire message at the start. But now, the strange part is that public attention still seems deeply connected to everything around him. In a way, it almost feels like he escaped one spotlight only to land in another completely different one. And according to a lot of reports and insider discussions, that pressure may be taking a real toll on him. People who followed Harry for years say he doesn't seem like the same carefree, relaxed person the public used to know. There's constant talk about him spending time online, seeing headlines, reading criticism, and getting dragged into nonstop public noise. That's the irony people keep pointing out. The man who wanted distance from media pressure now appears surrounded by it from every direction, just in a newer, more complicated form. At the same time, many people believe Meghan Markle handles these situations very differently than Harry does. From what's being reported, whenever criticism starts getting louder, especially around topics involving the children, public appearances, or questions about timelines, the response often seems focused on shutting the conversation down instead of directly clearing things up. There have been reports of legal warnings, firm statements, media pressure, and aggressive pushback against certain stories. And yes, strategies like that can absolutely stop rumors temporarily. But critics argue that it can also create the opposite effect over time. When people feel like they're not getting straightforward answers, they usually don't just move on quietly. They become even more curious. And when legal action enters the picture instead of open clarification, some people immediately start assuming there must be something important being hidden, even when that may not actually be true. That's the dangerous side of public perception. Once speculation starts building, it can move faster than facts. A lot of observers keep coming back to the same question. If everything is completely simple and straightforward behind the scenes, wouldn't it be easier to calm the noise with a few natural public moments? Something ordinary, something genuine, something unfiltered. Even one relaxed appearance with King Charles and the children, or a clearer public timeline, could probably silence huge portions of the speculation almost overnight. But because those moments rarely happen, the conversation keeps growing louder. Every missing detail creates another round of theories, debates, and headlines. Then there's Harry's personal circle, and honestly, this part stands out to a lot of people. Back in the UK, Harry had longtime military friends, old connections, and people who knew him long before the royal drama exploded. Those relationships gave him stability and balance. They were friendships built before global fame, interviews, streaming deals, and non-stop public controversy. Now, though, his world appears very different. These days, many of the people surrounding him seem connected to media, branding, PR, business deals, celebrity culture, and public image management. And critics point out that those relationships don't always function the same way as old loyal friendships. A business advisor or PR strategist may help protect an image, but that's not necessarily the same kind of support someone leans on when life gets emotionally difficult. And when someone slowly loses touch with the people who once kept them grounded, it becomes much easier to end up inside a bubble where the same viewpoints keep getting repeated over and over again. That's where situations like this can slowly start going off course. When someone mainly hears opinions that match their current thinking, it becomes harder to see how the outside world actually views things. Over time, that kind of environment can create a disconnect between private reality and public perception. And a lot of royal watchers believe that may be happening here. At the same time, the royal family itself seems to have taken a very careful step back from the entire situation, especially King Charles. And honestly, many people don't think that distance is accidental at all. It feels more strategic than emotional. Almost like the palace made a decision to avoid being pulled directly into unresolved public questions and ongoing media debates. From the monarchy's perspective, this goes way beyond simple family tension. The royal institution survives on tradition, stability, public trust, and carefully protected structure. Every public move is calculated because even small controversies can quickly grow into massive headlines around the world. So when conversations begin involving sensitive topics tied to lineage, succession, or royal legitimacy, the palace is never going to jump casually into the middle of that storm without complete clarity. That's why many observers think the royal family has chosen to keep a very visible distance while still technically leaving the door open. And that creates this really strange situation. Harry and Meghan are still connected to the monarchy by title and family ties, but at the same time, they also seem completely separated from its daily structure and traditions. They exist in this unusual middle ground where they're both inside and outside the royal system at the exact same time. But honestly, the people many sympathize with most in all of this are Archie and Lilibet. They never asked to be born into nonstop headlines, public debates, and royal controversy. Yet they're growing up surrounded by all of it while living far away from much of the wider royal family. Unlike William and Kate's children, who are often seen attending public events, family gatherings, and royal celebrations together, Archie and Lilibet appear to live in a much more tightly controlled environment. They're physically distant from cousins, grandparents, and many of the normal shared experiences royal children traditionally grow up with. Now, maybe that choice was made mainly for protection and privacy. Maybe some of it comes from wanting control over public exposure. Nobody outside the family truly knows. But either way, the result is still distance. And that distance affects more than just public curiosity. Family relationships can change too when people are separated for long periods of time. Shared memories, traditions, holidays, and everyday moments are often what keep families emotionally connected. Without those experiences, it can shape how children eventually understand their identity, relationships, and place within a larger family structure later in life. And when you step back and look at the bigger picture, the entire story starts feeling far more complicated than the simple version people were first introduced to. What originally looked like a clean escape for peace and freedom now feels more like a difficult trade-off filled with pressure, distance, image management, and unanswered questions still hanging in the air. Harry and Meghan may have walked away from one powerful system, but many people believe they stepped directly into another one with a completely different kind of pressure. Royal life came with strict traditions and constant public attention, but the celebrity media world brings its own non-stop demands, expectations, and image battles. And the longer this situation continues, the harder it seems to keep everything perfectly controlled. Instead of the attention fading away over time, the spotlight almost feels stronger now than it did in the beginning. What's changed is the type of attention they're receiving. The questions aren't only coming from gossip blogs or social media anymore. Now you have journalists, commentators, and investigators digging into timelines, public records, business deals, media contracts, finances, and past connections. The kind of details that don't simply disappear because of strong PR campaigns. Once people start examining patterns closely, every old detail suddenly gets pulled back into the conversation. One area getting renewed attention is Meghan Markle's early Toronto years before Prince Harry entered the picture. Back then, she was already spending time in influential social circles connected to places like Soho House, entertainment insiders, wealthy entrepreneurs, and people deeply familiar with networking, branding, and media positioning. Critics point out that she appeared very comfortable navigating elite environments long before becoming connected to the royal family. And when some observers compare those earlier circles to the people surrounding Harry and Meghan today, they notice similarities. Many of the same types of media strategists, celebrity connections, and branding-focused personalities still seem involved around them. That's why some people are starting to question whether leaving royal life was truly a sudden emotional decision or part of a much longer transition already taking shape behind the scenes. Because when you look at how quickly they moved into major interviews, streaming partnerships, production deals, documentaries, and global media branding, some critics argue it all appeared unusually organized and polished from the start. To them, it doesn't feel completely spontaneous. It feels carefully planned out. But this is where the situation becomes difficult. A plan like that only works if public interest stays strong over time. And right now, that interest is evolving into something far more intense than simple curiosity. People aren't only watching anymore, they're analyzing, questioning, and scrutinizing every move much more closely. There's also growing pressure tied to money and public expectations. That Montecito lifestyle comes with massive expenses: security teams, luxury property costs, travel, staff, and maintaining a high-profile public image all require huge financial backing. So when partnerships like Spotify collapse publicly, it doesn't just affect income, it affects public perception too. The headlines alone create new doubts and fresh criticism. Netflix remains a major deal, but even that relationship comes with pressure to consistently deliver content that keeps audiences engaged. And this may be the biggest challenge Harry and Meghan face moving forward. If they try moving completely away from royal-related stories and controversy, public attention seems to fade fast. But if they continue leaning into royal connections, interviews, and family tension, they risk keeping the drama alive permanently. At this point, it almost feels like Harry and Meghan are trapped inside a cycle they can't fully escape from. The more they try to move forward independently, the more public attention keeps circling back to the same royal controversies and unanswered questions. Then you add in the speaking events, international appearances, tours, interviews, and those expensive high-profile engagements designed to strengthen their public image. On paper, those events are supposed to position them as influential global figures with strong personal brands. But the reactions haven't always gone the way many expected. In some places, including parts of Australia, the public response has reportedly been far more critical and skeptical than supportive. People aren't simply showing up to listen quietly anymore. Audiences are starting to ask tougher questions like, what's actually being offered here? And how transparent are these projects and partnerships? That shift matters a lot when reputation is directly connected to income and long-term opportunities. Because the reality is, their entire public brand depends heavily on trust, influence, and public interest staying strong. Once skepticism starts replacing admiration, maintaining that image becomes much harder. At the same time, many royal observers believe there are also private discussions happening quietly behind palace walls that the public never fully sees. The monarchy still operates through old systems, legal structures, official procedures, and long-established protocols that don't suddenly disappear just because modern times have changed. That's the part many people underestimate. This situation isn't only about gossip headlines or internet debates. It's also about records, documentation, royal history, legal structure, and details that remain preserved long after media cycles move on. Inside institutions like the monarchy, paperwork and official verification matter enormously. And right now, critics argue there are still certain gaps and inconsistencies that continue fueling public speculation. Whether those gaps are ultimately minor or more meaningful, the fact that they exist at all is what keeps people talking. Every unclear timeline or unanswered detail becomes another reason for the conversation to continue growing. What makes everything even more complicated is that silence no longer works the way it once did. Years ago, public figures could sometimes stay quiet and wait for controversy to fade naturally. But in today's non-stop media environment, silence often creates the exact opposite effect. Every unanswered question quickly turns into endless online theories. Every legal warning or aggressive response adds another layer of curiosity and suspicion. And once people feel like information is being tightly controlled, they often start digging even harder. Eventually, Harry and Meghan may face a difficult choice between maintaining strict control over their image or offering more public clarity to calm the growing speculation. Because if this current pattern continues, the biggest risk may no longer be criticism alone. It could become long-term damage to credibility and public trust. And once public trust starts slipping, rebuilding it becomes incredibly difficult. That's the position many people believe Harry and Meghan are facing right now. At the same time, the royal family appears to be watching everything carefully from a distance. They rarely respond publicly, but nobody seriously believes they're ignoring what's happening behind the scenes. King Charles and Prince William both understand how much is at stake here. From the outside, their strategy seems very focused. Protect the monarchy first, protect the institution's stability, and avoid getting dragged too deeply into ongoing public controversy unless absolutely necessary. So now this entire situation feels stuck between two different worlds. Harry and Meghan have clearly built a new life, a new brand, and a completely different public identity in California. But no matter how far they move away physically, their image still remains heavily connected to the royal family they left behind. That connection keeps pulling everything back into the same cycle of headlines, speculation, and scrutiny. A lot of people believe things could have unfolded very differently if there had been more openness from the beginning. Maybe if there had been clearer communication early on, less tightly controlled messaging, and fewer carefully managed public moments, many of these questions would never have grown this large in the first place. But now, every single move they make gets examined from every possible angle. Every interview, every appearance, every photo release, every public statement instantly turns into another debate online. And honestly, most people aren't even demanding every private detail of their lives. What many really want is consistency. Something that feels natural, believable, and authentic instead of overly managed. Because at this point, this story has grown into something much bigger than just Prince Harry and Meghan Markle themselves. It's become a conversation about credibility, public trust, media, control, and perception. And once trust becomes the center of the story, it's extremely hard to shift attention away from it. So now the big question hanging over everything is this: do Harry and Meghan eventually become more open and clear the air once and for all? Or do they continue trying to tightly control the narrative while speculation keeps growing louder? And honestly, this story feels far from over. Every month seems to bring new headlines, new questions, and even more public attention surrounding what really goes on behind the scenes. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone else following the royal drama. And drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Harry and Meghan should become more transparent, or are they right to keep things private?